Right, we start with a breaking news story. The economy grew by 1.6% in the third quarter of this year. The figures released by Stats South Africa reflects the country's economic performance between July and September 2022. The agriculture, forestry and fishing industries performed the best, with a 19.2% increase between July and September. There's been increased economic activity reported for the field, crops and horticulture products. Finance, real estate and business services increased at a rate of 1.9%. 7 out of 10 manufacturing divisions reported positive growth rates in the third quarter. But economists warn that the third quarter performance comes off a low base. Well, let's unpack this further with our reporter Heidi Giokos. Heidi, what else did the Stats SA say, and particularly what did they attribute this growth to?
Yes, I think very positive news, Masejo, given the fact that there was a little bit of a concern that the country could possibly go into a technical recession if we saw quarter three in a negative. But some positive news finally, as we have been receiving very bad news as South Africans. The economy grew by 1.6% in the third quarter of this year. What's interesting, though, is that the agriculture, forestry and fishery industry has increased by 19.2%. That is almost 20% increase from quarter three, and that of course has been the major contributor when it comes to this economic growth of 1.6% that we have seen in quarter three. What has this contributed to? It doesn't really seem like Stats SA can explain why this particular sector has grown by almost 20%, but it seems as though it's increased economic activity when it comes to field crops and horticulture products. There was a question that was asked as to whether or not this has anything to do with what we are currently seeing with the Russia and Ukraine conflict, where we are seeing an impact when it comes to exports, but there has been no indication as yet, or rather there's been no indication to Stats SA that that could possibly be the reason. Transport also, we all thought that there might be some decline when it comes to transport, given what we have been seeing, especially when it comes to our rail infrastructure, but it seems as though there has been an increase by 3.7%. So most sectors saw an increase except electricity and gas. There was no movement there, which is very understandable given what we have been seeing with load shedding. But let's listen to what Stats SA had to say about the recent GDP numbers for quarter three.
Our industries were revised upwards, with the largest difference being the industry for trade, catering, accommodation. We previously had a contraction of 1.5%. We softened the contraction slightly to minus 1.0%. That was a 0.5 difference. And similarly, we revised upwards the estimates for construction, manufacturing, and then the business services. On the downside, we previously had general government estimated at negative 1.4. That moved down slightly to negative 1.5. And then the largest revision was on agriculture, forestry and fisheries, where we changed the previous estimate of negative 7.7 down to a negative 11.1. Overall, these pluses and minuses cancelled out, so the estimate for the economy in total remains a negative 0.7. So the highlights for the quarter that we're releasing is that the quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted growth is estimated at 1.6%. If we compare the year-on-year numbers, Q3 with Q3, the estimate is very strong 4.1, but we need to keep in mind the low level that we had in the third quarter last year. And if we take the year to date, in other words, the first 3 quarters of this year with the corresponding 3 quarters of the previous year, the estimate is for growth of 2.3%. We tend to always compare the size of the economy with what happened pre-COVID and after COVID, and we will remember that in Q1 of this year, we were actually estimating the economy to be larger than the pre-COVID levels, but then with the negative we had last quarter, we dipped below that, but we now again above.
All right, Heidi, what was surprising for me is the performance of the manufacturing industry, especially when you look at the fact that we've had very bad power, struggles in terms of Eskom since around 2-3 months ago, or even more than that, throughout the course of this year, really. And that's what surprised me the most.
Yes, brilliant question and brilliant point, Masego. The fact that manufacturing and construction, even mining, have done reasonably well, given the fact that we have been subjected to possibly the worst kind of load shedding and rolling blackouts that this country has ever seen. And we thought that the manufacturing and construction, mining as well, would have performed very badly and would have possibly been in a negative, but it seems as though that has not been the case. And when the question was asked as to why it seems as though these sectors have performed reasonably well, given the rolling blackouts situation that we are constantly subjected to, it almost seems as though businesses have decided to take it upon themselves to find alternative sources of energy. And given the fact that the President has announced on 2 occasions that independent power producers are able to come in and move in and not solely be dependent on Eskom when it comes to electricity supply, it seems as though these sectors have said, well, load shedding is here to stay. It doesn't seem as though it's going to get any better. We have been going through the most when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, and now we have rolling blackouts. So it seems as though businesses have, of course, found a way to move around this and to, of course, find a way to continue with their production. The question was also asked as to how load shedding has in any way impacted our growth when it comes to the economy, and if that has all been factored in. That has not yet been factored in, and Stats SA has indicated that they will possibly be doing collection of those statistics and surveys about the load shedding aspect of things, because that of course has a huge impact when it comes to our economy. So it's great news that our economy has grown given the load shedding aspect, Masego.
And we'll take whatever great news we can get, won't we, Heidi? Heidi Giokos, live for us in Johannesburg.